Well, we did it. We made it through eclipse season. Congratulations. Oh, yeah. How was that? How are you feeling after all that? I know it can be a lot to handle new energy coming at us. But remember, it's twice a year and it's normally for our benefit, right? Sometimes when we are hitting new growth things, we really dig our feet in, right? Because why would we want to change something that is apparently working? But that's why we do things like, review. Is it actually working? Just because it feels like it's been working, is it there? And that was the whole point of eclipse season, to give you a chance to really hone in on a particular area of your life and see if it really is working. And if it's not, make the change. Now, sure, the eclipses are now over because we had one on the 7th, we had one on the 21st. Technically, we'll revisit this again a little bit next year, but the nodes will start shifting into the new areas and we'll have kind of this overlap wobble space where it's a mix of your current areas and the new area. So just keep in mind that while the big energy impulses, like those catalysts that really bring the tower down, right, that bolt of lightning, that lightning strike's not there anymore. But it's kind of like if you've been in an earthquake, there's the main shakeup and there's some aftershocks, right? And so between now, probably for a couple months, you may be seeing these things actually unfold. This is what I love about paying attention to the cycles and paying attention to the energy that comes through. I never look at tarot as this is the exact answer. It's more of a, hey, pay attention to this area. If you do this, if you approach it in this way, we could see some big shifts, right? Because it all plays out over time. And it's like that butterfly effect, right? The beating of the butterfly's wings can cause a tornado halfway around the world. The actions you take can make a big difference later on down the road. Okay, here's my example, the one that I think about time and time again, especially since right now I'm looking at career type spaces. Growing up, I wanted to be a marine biologist. Born in 87, seemed like there was a lot of us during a certain time period where marine biology super prevalent, that people wanted to be marine biologists. I don't know if it was the just having SeaWorld be a really big deal. My obsession became Jacques Cousteau. I loved watching the videos that they had produced with Jacques Cousteau so that people could learn about the ocean and the depths and the exploration and all of that. Really, really loved this idea. Now, I had a family friend who was a marine biologist, and I learned a little bit more about what it was like for her as a marine biologist. Now, sure, you could say a wise person would take a sampling across multiple things, right? Multiple people. What are your experiences? Instead, I kind of took her experiences and I asked her questions, and I got to the point where I was like, I don't think being in a research lab is going to be my excitement, because what I was really enjoying was watching Jacques Cousteau, right? Actually going out into the ocean and exploring the ocean and finding new things and discovering it and talking about it. Those all sounded really fun. The marine biologist I knew spent a lot of time in her lab, and then she also got to go through sewers filled with giant spiders in Florida and help manatees who got stuck in the sewer systems get back out into the ocean where they actually, could thrive. I loved manatees. I still love manatees, and that love for manatees came from hearing her stories. But I slowly started to decide marine biology, not the thing I wanted to go for. So instead, what I did learn about was the fact that there were places that created these robots that went underwater and they explored the ocean, and they created, special submarines for people to go in, but they also created these special robots that could go down even deeper and really decide if it was worth it for the explorers to go into. And I was like, that's really cool. I want to do whatever it is that gets you to do that. Awesome. So learned that engineering was who engineers were the people who made these robots. Cool. So I decided I was going to go towards engineering, decided I really liked physics. Out of all of the science classes I took, physics was my favorite. Great. Mechanical. Done. Mechanical engineering, solid career choice. Let's do it. So the college that I went to was Northeastern University. Great school. Loved it. In Boston. The thing that I loved about this school the most, the thing that drove me to decide to go there, besides it being in Boston, which I loved the idea of being in the city and exploring that for the first time, was the fact that as part of the curriculum, they helped you find internships that were 6 months long that you learned how to be an engineer. And that felt really important to me because I could see potentially doing a whole bunch of different things with an engineering degree, including doing underwater robots. But I wanted to actually experience it and know that that was what I really wanted. And so I went to Northeastern, and my second co op, I had the opportunity. I interviewed at a place that made autonomous underwater autonomous vehicles, UAVs. That's what they did. These were the people who worked with the Jacques Cousteaus of the world to explore the ocean. Amazing. This is exactly what drove me. This was my catalyst to go this route, right? It didn't work out. I got offered the job. I was really excited about it. But it just was in a location that would have made it difficult for me to actually live there for the 6 months I needed to live there. I didn't have a car at the time, so it would have been really difficult to get to work because, again, it was an area where you didn't live near the work. You would have had to drive to it. It just wasn't going to work out. So I put it on the shelf. I said, okay, this isn't what we're going to do right now. That's okay. I did a couple more interviews, and I ended up interviewing at a medical device company where they were going to have multiple people who were going to be working there from my class. And then that would mean that I could carpool and it'd be great. I could still live in the apartment I was living on in Boston and drive to work with other people and carpool. Cool. So I had never heard of medical device, decided I would take it. Okay. Catalyst, right? So one thing, which was me not being able to take this job that had been the driver for me to even get into engineering, right? That job didn't work for me. So I took a different job. Okay. Medical device, ended up falling in love with the idea of medical device. It was really eye-opening. It was an area I had never explored before. We got to make things that went inside of people that helped them. The group I was working in did biopsy equipment. So they were going into difficult areas to reach, using an endoscope and taking a small sample of tissue so they could biopsy it and know if it was cancer or not. Really cool stuff. Got to play around with materials, learned about different materials I had never heard of before. I loved it. And so then, when I went to graduate 2 years later, I applied essentially to jobs that were tied to ocean things, just because that was still a passion, though it had taken a little bit of a backseat, and medical device. And it was like, okay, here I am. This is what I know. This is what I've experienced. This is what I'm going to apply for. The other thing, that was the other little bit of a catalyst. I met someone, my third co-op, who was from the Midwest. They went to school in Boston for college. And then after college, they went out to California. And then after that, they ended up in Rhode Island, where I was doing my final co-op. And they had said, graduating college is the perfect time to try something new. It is a clear delineation of what you had been doing to what you could be doing. So if you wanted to explore somewhere new, where better, when better than right after graduation, because your whole point is to look for a job. And I started thinking about where I would like to live. And I thought California would be a really cool place to try living, at least for a little while. So everywhere I applied was up and down the coast of California, essentially. So those two things ended up being a catalyst for me, right? Deciding not to take the underwater job. And that led me to actually doing medical device, something I had never even considered ever in my life before that. And being told, like, hey, why not consider the option of moving somewhere else? Why not? And they were this catalyst that at the moment was a spark, right? That was that tower lightning bolt. Oh my goodness, something else can happen. And they then had reverberations, right? The med device meant that I then could look for med device jobs when I graduated. I could look in California because I considered somewhere else. Okay. And then that led to me moving to California. And then that led me to being in an area in California I'd never been. And that led me to meeting my now husband. Like all of these things all happened with that catalyst of this job isn't going to work for you because of XYZ thing. It's time to pivot and try something new. So that is all to say, whatever felt like the spark of inspiration during this eclipse season, most likely it is going to have ways that it ripples out throughout time in your life, right? Just because the monumental moments of eclipse season, right, that specific day, just because that day is done, does not mean that we are done with the changes it may provide, right? So now is the time that we start going, okay, how do I work with this shift? How is this going to be something that I can figure out where we're integrating it, how we're going through it? What does this mean for me as I keep going through? Tarot and astrology and things like, divination and human design and premonitions that we have, all of these things, there are moments that help us figure out how to act as we move forward. They are suggestions, they are guidance, they are things that we can consider how we want to actually act, right? And then when we just leave it and never revisit it, then we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because we're not giving us our chance to actually consider and then work it in and know how did that pan out and what did that all come back to. The card that I think of the most when I think of this is the Judgment card. It's really funny because if you're watching this in real time, we just had a moment where we were told that there was the potential that the rapture was coming. And it's funny because technically the Judgment card, if you know the history behind it, is essentially depicting what one might consider the rapture. So we have an angel who has a trumpet, and they are calling these people who are in graves. The boxes that the people are standing in are their coffins, okay? And you have the angel above beckoning them, okay? So that imagery very much is rapture imagery, right? We're calling the people that have lived a certain way to come forward and be eternal, okay? But what does that mean actually? Okay, right? So what does it mean when judgment shows up? So when judgment card shows up, we can consider things like the rapture, sure, because we can think of things like, okay, what is it? What's that supposed to mean? What it's supposed to mean is it's a time to take assessment of what has worked and what hasn't worked, and then go forward with what has worked? What are we taking with us? Judgment card is number 20. If you're aware of the major arcana inside of tarot, we go from 0 being the Fool, and that is our infinite possibilities are 0. And then we've got 1, which is the Magician. And then we go all the way to 21. And 21 is the World card. 21 is the idea of completing of the cycle. Before we complete the cycle, there is a point with the Judgment card of let's assess what worked and didn't work in this cycle so we can then only move forward out of this cycle with the things that do work, right? We when I was in the corporate space, that's what we were supposed to do as an annual review, right? Your annual review was supposed to be this opportunity to sit down with your manager and say, these are the things that were great this year. Let's keep growing that. These are some areas of improvement. These are things that people talk about doing every new year, right? If you're setting New Year's resolutions or looking at going into the new year, it really should be with the idea of what just happened this past year? What did I really like? What are my desires for the year to come, right? But we sometimes forget that option, that we have that choice to pause and say, what has worked? What am I excited about that just happened? That reflection period is so important. And it's important when we do tarot. And it's important when we look at astrology, because these things are about the energy we're going through, and they're the cycles that we go through, and what is happening and how is it happening and what actually occurred. That's why astrology started in the first place, was because people were looking at the cycles and they said, what was happening in the night sky when this last happened, right? And that's what you can do in your own chart, especially when it comes to eclipses. And it's like, okay, this eclipse season, I knew it was in this area of my life that I was potentially going to have a shakeup. Great. What actually happened? What did I feel? How did that come through? Okay. Tarot gives us that opportunity to say, oh, I know at the beginning of eclipse cycle, I pulled the 3 of Swords as my card of these are the things that you're going to go through. Okay. It's going to be this. Great. So that means during the time I can look out for that thing and be like, hey, okay, I knew that this was a potential. I'm going to work through this. And it makes it easier to work through it. And then also at the end of it now, as we're in this integration period of really making sure that we're taking the lessons we learned and figuring out how to work with them long term, because now we have 9 years before we're even back in the same axis, right? Then it's like, okay, great. I did learn about the 3 of Swords. I did learn about what is it like to try to speak up, even if I am nervous about what might be thought of my words. Okay. And how did that play out? And what is it like? And did I show up more, or did I just keep hiding because I was so scared that that 3 of Swords was going to show up, right? What did I actually do in this period of time? And that's so important with every tarot reading. If you're going to get them on the regular because it's something you think is actually valuable in your life, then it's one of those things that we should go back and reflect. We're nearing the end of the month. In the beginning of every month, I like to do a month ahead reading. It's not a reading to tell me what exactly is going to happen, as in like, oh, expect to fall down the stairs 3 times. No, it's more like, hey, this month your lessons are going to be around building community. Okay. And so then it's like, oh, great. I'm going to keep an eye out for ways I can build community this month, right? It's the signpost. Where can I get going? Where can I focus this month? What is the thing that should be showing up for me, and how can I best work with it? Okay. And now that we're at the end of the month, now's the time to look back at that reading from the beginning of the month and go, where did that show up? How did that show up? And that gives us an idea to really understand how tarot shows up in our life. And when we say the 3 of Swords is showing up, cool, in what ways? And then that gives us a better understanding and trust in ourselves, and trust in the cycles, and trust in the reading, right? And so going back and reflecting is such an important part of all of this. So if you learned where the eclipse was happening in your own chart, please take a moment and just consider things that might have changed during this time and things that you want to continue growing over the next, let's give it 6 months, okay? Because that gives you a chance to really not rush through the process. There's no need to rush through anything. Sure, we have a lightning bolt that brings a tower down, but that is a instant which then can ripple out over time. Okay? So, eclipses are over. It's time to integrate. Okay, card. So, like I like to do at the end of each episode, we're going to pull a card on how can we best actually integrate the lessons we learned during eclipse season. Let's see what the advice is. The advice is the Eight of Swords. Now, the Eight of Swords is a woman who is standing stuck. She is tied up, and there are 8 swords around her, and she's also blindfolded. Okay? You can see, though, on the ground in front of her is a small stream of water. Now, why is this important? I think the next episode I'm going to talk a bit about the swords, because I do think they get a little bit of a misunderstanding. I think I talked about them in the last one, maybe. So obviously they're coming up. But the thing is, to be able to integrate this, we can't stick our head in the sand and say we don't know where to go. Okay? And that's what happens with the Eight of Swords. It looks like she doesn't know how to get unstuck from where she is. But when we see that there's water involved, that means that there is an inner knowing associated with this card as well. So she has lots of thoughts that might feel like they're keeping her stuck, but she has an inner knowing of what will help her get free of this moment. Okay. So if the eclipse lessons, if it's been hard to actually understand what was brought up specific to this eclipse, the key is to actually sort through all of the thoughts and feelings and fear and concern that you're having about whatever happened during this time. And then really pick out the key pieces of wisdom that are there in those thoughts. Sometimes we have an overwhelming amount of thoughts, but the thing is, there's always something there that is actually a key piece of wisdom for us to take with us. Whether that's oh, I learned that I really am afraid if I do this thing. And I know that I don't like to do it. So I'm not going to force myself to keep doing that thing. It is time to pivot and try something new. I got stuck there, and I know it's because it's not worth me trying to get over this. Or I tried something new during this time, and I was surprised at how different I felt when I did that thing. I don't know if I want to do it all the time, but maybe I can start doing it a little bit every now and then, right? So that's a little bit of wisdom that we find among all the fear or confusion or doubt that might be also in our brain. Our brains are wired to keep us safe. And so then it's like just helping and going, okay, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I know that there's a lot going on. Let's see what is actually going to help us be the best version of ourselves out of all of these things that are going on in our head. And so 8s are actually about movement. And so she feels stuck in this moment, but there is a key piece of wisdom, a key thought that will help her get unstuck and actually start making the movements that she needs to make. Okay. And so that is our advice here at the end of eclipse season. At the end of the month here is to actually kind of take time to reassess what happened, what worked, what didn't work, what feels like it's value add, what feels like it's just noise. Sift through it all. journal on it. Journaling is my favorite way to actually kind of get through some of these thoughts when I feel like I have excess thoughts. The other thing to do is try to not think about them. Kind of like when we think about how we have a problem that we're ruminating on, and if we go do something else, sometimes the answer then comes to us, right? Whether it's in the shower, while we're doing dishes, while we're doing an activity we like to do, that our brain doesn't necessarily have to be a big part of it. And so then it kind of just is able to work through whatever it is we're trying to get. So that's your advice. I will be doing a month ahead reading for all of my patrons on my Patreon. You just have to be a member of the free tier. I use it also kind of as my email newsletter through there. I do a reading where it's the theme of the month and how we can work with that, mind, body, soul. And so that is available there. And then I also do month ahead readings, personal month ahead readings for people. So the one on my Patreon is a collective reading, but I also have in-depth month ahead readings for people to get so that you can be ready for the month ahead and knowing what you might be coming up against and how to best go through that. So that's what I've got. I'll talk a little bit about swords next week, and I will talk also about soul cards, because now that eclipse season is wrapped up, I would like to go back to talking about soul cards, which is something I love so much. So we'll be talking about that next week. I hope you have a fantastic week. Good luck integrating. Sending you much love and magic. Bye for now.